Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's me, RJ, and today the title of my presentation is called Demons in My Sleep. In 1867, Dr. Silas Mitchell was thought to be the first to give a scientific definition of a condition. This condition is called sleep paralysis. And even though Dr. Mitchell was the first one to observe patients in the case of sleep paralysis, it is so common that most culture around the world had a mythological or paranormal representation of what happens. A succubus, a jinn, or the hag, or a nightmare. Nightmare. Which is actually just an incubus. And also, to some extent, here in the Philippines, the manananggal. But what a lot of people don't know is that more than 20 years before Dr. Mitchell even coined the definition in his head, Herman Melville, an American novelist, would write about it in a cult classic. I'm pretty sure all of you know, or a lot of you are familiar, Moby Dick. But before delving deeper, let's go back to the definition that Dr. Mitchell wrote. The subject awakes to the consciousness of his environment, but is incapable of moving a muscle, lying to all appearances still asleep. He is freely engaged in a struggle for movement fraught with acute mental distress. Could he but manage to stir, the spell would vanish instantly. That's how Dr. Mitchell defined sleep paralysis. To be brief, the main symptom of sleep paralysis is the incapability to move or talk during an awakening. It is often categorized or accompanied by imagined sounds like whispers, humming, buzzing, thumping, hissing, clashing. There are also reports of sensations being dragged out of beds or flying or what seems like an alien abduction. But the main cause, of course, that is a lot of sleep paralysis may be accompanied by hypnagogic hallucinations, such as the creatures that we've talked before. The hag, a jinn, an incubus, a satyr. You can actually research about this, but I'll not list everything. But there are some cases that the sleeper or the person hallucinates a real person. A study published in the Sleep Medicine Journal reported that out of 185 patients, 58% sensed a non-human presence, while 22% thought it was an actual person. So, how do people get this paralysis in their sleep? Well, it may be easier to blame them on the demons in their sleep, and this was actually true to a lot of people in the ancient times, during the times when the Romans wore skirts. Not only the Romans, but A lot of Gentile religions originated from encounters with sleep paralysis. Imagine being someone in the ancient times experiencing sleep paralysis, seeing these vivid creatures, these demons, these abnormal uh, hallucinations, not having science to explain this. Lots of their gods originated from this sleep paralysis hallucinations. Satyrs, dire wolves, buff bearded dudes who shoot lightning. That's Zeus, by the way, in case you didn't. Anyway, but what really happens has something to do with the overlap of REM, or rapid eye movement stage of sleep, and the waking stage of sleep. During the REM, we all know that the body is paralyzed. We experience a number of sensory stimuli in form of a dream. During the dream, special neurotransmitters, GABA and glycine, are released, and this neurotransmitters paralyze almost all our muscles to keep us from acting out our dream. For example, if we're running in our dream, GABA and glycine helps us to not run in real life. Fun fact, the wrong activation of GABA and glycine is the actual reason for sleepwalkers. Yeah, it's a fact, but it's not fun. Sorry. But sometimes REM stage gets overlapped with the waking stage of sleep. And the result is your brain is conscious, but your whole body is paralyzed. And this is what's causing us to feel like we're having a supernatural or paranormal encounter. And this explains the hallucinations. Whatever you're dreaming, you might see in the real life, or you might think you see it. But what about the fear, the panic, the intense sweating, the chest pressure? Well, there are actually several explanations for this one. The first one is in REM sleep, one of the most active players is the amygdala, which we know is responsible for fear and emotional memory. Oh, that explains the nightmares, the scary dreams, but this also explains the feeling you get when you dream. Sometimes in your dream, you feel sad, you feel happy, and then when you wake up, you feel the same thing. And that's why we feel a lot of emotions during sleep. You have a part of your brain actively responding to fear or something emotional, and we all know that when we feel fear or we feel certain emotions, our heart rate goes faster. And that's the first explanation. Another known reason is that REM atonia removes voluntary control over our chest muscles, with the exception of our diaphragm. And that makes your breathing more shallow and rapid. You breathe more carbon dioxide and experience a small blockage in your airway. And the struggle for air while sleeping creates a perceived asphyxiation. But it's just perceived chest suffocation. But even though this may seem cut out of a movie scene, sleep paralysis is actually very common. And 4 out of 10 people, 40% experience sleep paralysis at least once in their lifetime. There are people though who experience this more often than others. This condition is called isolated sleep paralysis, and the more severe or the longer the episodes are, uh, the more you venture toward the recurrent isolated sleep paralysis. But regardless of the type, the episodes of sleep paralysis are generally 1 to 6 minutes. There are records of sleep paralysis being longer than that, but those are just extremes that are out of the general. And even though it may sound scary to people who haven't experienced it yet, and it may seem to come out of a scene from Nightmare on Elm Street, it's very not deadly, unlike Freddy Krueger. Well, sleep paralysis may be associated with some other deadly conditions like narcolepsy, what else? Arrhythmia, hypokalemia, or sleep apnea, and even SUNDS, or what we call here in Southeast Asia as pangungod, or Philippines, sorry. For people who do want to know how to defend against the dark arts, there are some ways you can avoid sleep paralysis. First one is don't sleep. Hey, you can't experience sleep paralysis if you are not asleep. Just a little joke. Anyway, in all seriousness, to avoid sleep paralysis, you just have to sleep 6 to 8 hours a day. That's fair normal. But you have to do it consistently every day in a consistent time frame. And preferably before 10 p.m. Another one is exercise. Just a 30-minute jog or walk every day in the morning would suffice. But if you're normal like me and understand that sleep paralysis means no harm, you could focus on triggering or practicing lucid dreaming or OBE or out of body experiences, because it is actually proven that people who do this experience perspective shifts. And according to research, lucid dreaming is correlated with improving problem solving or creativity insight. So next time you experience this sleep paralysis phenomenon, don't be afraid. Just embrace it.